Hi, this is going to be the third video in my series on building sample slicers in the grid. In the last video, we made a basic beat division slicer and we got the whole time to work with the loop length. In this video, we're going to start adding manual slicing. And I might end up making several videos about different methods for manual slicing because since I started making these types of slicers in the grid, I've been experimenting with different methods for getting manual slicing to work. And each method has its pros and cons. With this kind of thing, I'm usually trying to find a balance between being able to expand it to have as many features as I want, but also keeping the CPU usage reasonable. So yeah, some of the features you might want to expand it with that kind of have to be taken into account when kind of deciding on a method for manual slicing are things like segments and unlink. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I went over this stuff in the first video in the series, but so if you look over here, you can see these unlink buttons. So you can see by default, these slices are all linked together. So where one slice ends, the other one begins. And I have it set up that when you're entering slice points, you can't really go outside of those bounds. But let's say you do want to go outside of those bounds, or you want to have overlapping slices or slices removed. That's why I added this unlink feature. So like, let's say this slice over here, I want to just take it out, put it somewhere else. I can do that now, and what's happened now is that the slice before it is now linked to the slice that was after it. And then if I remove another one, now it's going to be linked to this one. And then if I want to remove these hits, then I could just go back to this one and remove this. So now these slices are unlinked. So these can be basically put anywhere, and they're not connected anymore to the slices that were before and after them. So like this slice, let's say I want it to be this snare that's over here. I can do that even though it's not connected to the whole link. So you see. And now this one can also be moved out because it's on, or here, I'll just put it back. So you see, that's what unlink does. So unlink ends up being kind of a useful feature if you want to be able to change things after you've sliced them. Like if you want to add in slices, if you want to remove slices, also if you want to have different sections that are overlapped. For example, if you want every drum hit to be sliced, but you also want to have like 1 bar phrases of a drum loop as their own slice, you can do that with unlinking. But unlinking complicates things a lot. You have to end up adding a whole lot more information because a lot more slices have to be read, excuse me, for unlinking to work. So I'm not even going to get into setting up unlinking right now, but I'm going to be probably mentioning it throughout this video in terms of just talking about things you have to keep in mind when sort of deciding on the structure to go with to get the manual slicing to work. And then the other thing to keep in mind is let me just put this back to where it was. I think I had this at 450. Or where was this? Oh. All right. The other feature to keep in mind to kind of decide if you're going to want it later on or not is segments. And if you don't know what I'm talking about with segments, if you look at this clip, you can see this is 631 seconds. So this clip is split into 32 segments. Each segment is sliced into 64 slices. And so each segment can be of any length, and each segment can have its own slicing settings. So those slicing settings would just be a modulator. In this case, most of these segments are just variations on the same patterns. So I was able to use OR modules, but some of them aren't. So those ones you can see have their own modulators. So you can see if I was to move through here, or here we'll even get more of them. So you can see these are all different segments. Actually, if you look at the clip while I'm just a few things, you can see these are all different segments, but they're all sliced in the same way. So yeah, so just keep in mind those are the kind of most obvious features that you might want to add and kind of think about when deciding on what method to go with for slicing. I think in this video I'm gonna do sort of to start with a kind of a hybrid method where I'm doing, well, all right, I'll show you that stuff later, or maybe I'll really quickly show. Yeah, no, I'll show you later. Let's see. So, I guess let's just start adding these, adding some manual points to this thing. So, if you followed the last video, this would be the patch that we finished with. And after recording that video, I realized that this whole time fixes was not done very well. The timing hasn't been perfect on this setup. I'm not totally sure why. So, like I said in the last video, this was kind of a new structure. It's not the same as the structure I've used before. So it's working a little bit differently. So I'm not sure if the timing is going to be perfect on this. So we might have to tweak some things. Like in my main patch, I didn't have this whole change that I did in the last video where I brought this from 100 to 99.65. So just because this thing was made in a different way, we had to do these kind of accommodations. But it seemed like it was working when we were making when I was doing the last video. But then I saw that when I got to really small slices, they were having clicks. So I don't want to get too bogged down with that right now, because we might revisit different things for hold time later. But at least just for now, to make sure there isn't a click, if we bring the loop length down, you see how we're getting a click. So we're just going to want to bring this number up. Let's try just bringing it up till we have no click. You might get one as you move loop length, but I mean, these things are going to be determined by slice points, so you wouldn't really be moving these in real time. So the only thing to worry about is once it's settled, do you get a click? That seems pretty good. Let's see now if we go up to a larger division. I mean, a larger sample size. Will it play all the way through? That seems pretty good. So that's not good. It missed that last kick. Let's see if we just remove this, because I think for larger ones, we don't even need this to be connected. You know what? I'm going to remove this bend too. All right, that's good now for the larger one. Let's go back to the small one. Or we can just do that here. That click happened because I was moving this in time, but like I said, you don't generally change your slice points in real time, so. There's still a little bit of one right there. Maybe let's try. That seems pretty good. All right, I don't want to get too bogged down in this part of it right now, because like I mentioned in the last video too, this might just be a temporary solution right now because the math wasn't 100% accurate. But the one thing, the numbers were accurate. If you saw the numbers that we were using, they were accurate, but you have to kind of still make some little adjustments, because you'll notice that with the sampler, even when you're at 0 on the hold, it gives you 1 millisecond. And so, you know, you sometimes do have to make little adjustments just to get this stuff to work properly. But this seems pretty good. All right. And we can figure out other things later if this becomes an issue. But sometimes you kind of have to actually start slicing and start working with it to really kind of understand what the sort of behavior and what the sound is of it. So yeah, so let's start right now by just making a basic setup for inputting in the manual slice points. And one thing, I'm going to do this on one session right now, because, or on one grid patch, because it's going to be hard for you to see what I'm doing if I'm doing this within two different patches. But later on, I'll probably split them off and copy part of it to a different patch. Like I have it on my patch over here. So you can see on this one, the slices get entered in on this patch over here. But then that basically sends to this patch where all the math and stuff happens, because The whole point of that is to keep the CPU usage low, because a grid patch, when it's open, uses a lot more CPU than when it's closed. Even if you're running audio through it, even if you're using it, just if the window is open, it uses a lot more CPU. So because of that, I like to basically have all the stuff that's not necessary for the person using the patch to see, to just be on a patch that never has to be open. So basically, with this project, you never have to open this patch. And then once you've entered in your slice points, you never have to open up this patch. So because this one also creates, brings the CPU usage up a little bit. But basically, I have it set up that, you can enter in the manual slices and then never open up that patch again either. So then the CPU usage stays pretty reasonable. All right, so what I'm going to do first is let's just add some knobs right now that can be the slice points. And one thing too, before you even start with this, you can sort of decide how you want manual slicing to be. You can just have it to where it shifts your division slicing over a little bit, so that you just get knobs that can move the points of the division slicing. But I prefer to just have a full manual mode where it just starts where they're not even connected at all, because usually the way I like to do it is have each knob at 100 or at 1, so I could just turn them back until they hit the slice that I want. So that's the way I like to work with manual slicing. You can have multiple modes working at the same time, but then, that's how I had it set up before, but I ended up not really ever using the hybrid beat division manual mode, so I just have a beat division mode and a full manual mode. So let's for now let's do a setup for 32 slices. So I'm going to call this course. I'll put another one underneath it and call this one fine. And we're going to add these two together. But what I'm going to do is run this one into an attenuator and put it at like 1%. And so the point of that is that, this is your general slice point. But the thing is, these knobs can only get to so fine of a resolution. So this just allows you to get to an even finer resolution for each slice point. So now this setup will represent a slice point. So what I'm going to do is copy this. I'm first going to copy it 8 times because I just want to color code these so we can kind of, just so it's easier to see what we're doing. So I'm just going to go in order. Or, before I copy these, just to save time, we can first run these into a merge. So let's run these first 8 into a merge, because then we can copy those together so we don't need to rewire each one. And yeah, I usually do 64 on mine, but I'm just doing 32 on here just for the sake of just to not have to spend as much time on everything. It's going to be the same idea, so however you want to do, you can scale it up. And again, with this whole series, I'm kind of trying to show you some different ways to do it. So it's like not like you're making the exact same patch as me, but so you can kind of play with some of these ideas to build your own kind of samplers that might do totally different things than what I'm doing with it. All right. So if we imagine that these now are inside of a separate patch, because like I was saying, eventually I'm going to move this to a separate patch that will be the main working patch, and all the math will be nested inside of there. You have to kind of decide how you want to send the information from here to the other patch. So, the most obvious way would be to send each slice as its own modulator. So that would mean having basically 32 modulators that's each running out, that's sending into the next patch. But I prefer not to do it that way, because I feel like it ends up increasing CPU usage to have that many sends coming in and out. So I like to do this way where I have a really fast LFO that's scanning each slice, and then that LFO basically gets sent into the other project, where you can have array modules, or I'm going to start with sample and holds, but later on we'll move to arrays with sample and hold modules that just basically like receive it and then hardwire it to like its state. So I'll show you what I'm talking about, and maybe before we do even get to there, just so we can see which slice we're working on, let's do this. So first of all, we don't need to see these, so I'm just going to kind of move these off just to kind of get the interface of the general slicing area to look a little bit nicer. And then what I'm going to do, since we're deciding that we're dealing with 32 slices for the manual mode, what I'm going to do for this, the start time modulator, is I'm just going to put a selector over there. I'm going to have a button. This button will probably be used all over the place for switching things from beat division to manual. So this will switch it to, or that's actually not where I want to put this. Let's do it here. Divide by. We're going to need one there later too, I think. But for now, let's do one here where we just decide that this divides. I don't actually remember if I need it here. I don't know why I'm doing this. Oh, I'm doing this just so that, yeah, this will be helpful later on. So let's just do this. We'll call this manual. So this will just say that the start time is being divided by 32. We'll call this manual. And this actually will be useful right now. So the start time, what I'm going to do, I want to have a visual to be able to tell which slice is active at any given time. So let's do this. Let's take a data, stretch it out over here. Let's make it be 16 steps so that it matches these knobs below. I'm going to make it a color that's easy to see. Let's make it purple. And then what I'm going to do is, so where's the start time is over here. So what I'm going to do, I want it to basically be highlighted whenever we're on an active slice. So what I'm going to do is take the start time, multiply it by 2, feed that into the first one, and then let's see, is that working? Yeah, okay. So is that going to work all the way? Oh, yeah, what we want to do now is take a bias, run that here, and run that into the second one. Oh, this should not be, I don't know why is that. I have a weird mode. It's funny, for some reason some things are working different in this project. I feel like I have some sort of setting on the grid working different, because if you would have seen the last video, I had to set this to last in order to get the slices working correctly, which in my main project I don't have it set to last. I have it set to default, so I'm not totally sure why. I need to look into that. So I'm hoping that's not going to give us any issues further down. Like I was saying in the last video too, sometimes a lot of that kind of stuff depends on the settings we have over here. So I might have just had something set wrong. For one, oh yeah, I have retrigger at never. It should probably be an always. But anyway, yeah, some things are working different. But anyway, since you can see that this, we don't want this still playing over here, so I'm just gonna, what I'm going to do is just put a selector here, and we'll say that if this value is greater than 1, it'll then this will be accessed. And why is that? We don't want that one. That one shouldn't be looping around. I don't know why. It usually doesn't work like this. For some reason, something is working differently. Anyway, that works now. So if you don't understand what I was doing, I was basically just what this bias is. So we were multiplying the start time, so it goes from 0 to 1, and then it goes from 1 to 2. So we're just saying that once it goes above 1, it will allow this one into here, and it will turn off this one. So that's the whole point of that. I might just turn this off because we don't need to hear anything right now. We're just going to be doing the stuff visually. So this will allow us to know which slice we're working on. So I was talking a minute ago about these different methods for sending the information into the other projects. So I like to sometimes do this method where I kind of scan through all the values and send them into another grid patch. And this method works really well for bringing CPU usage down, but sometimes it can give weird inaccuracy. So lately I've been doing kind of a hybrid of the two where all my slices are being scanned except for just the one active that's playing is hardwired in. And so we can kind of see what we're doing, I'm going to give us a few different values on these so that we can kind of see that the numbers are going to be matching. All right, whatever. I'll just bring a couple up over here. All right. So what I'm going to do is get an LFO. I'm going to put it really fast. I'm going to put it, I think I had mine at like 20. It doesn't really matter, but you just want it fast. So I'm going to put it at 24K. And so this is a very, very fast LFO. So what this is going to be doing is just running through these to scan all the info. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this control the main one, but I'm going to multiply this. Since we have 4 of these, I'm going to multiply this by 4 and get these, and then wire these up. I'm going to call this a slice scan. So now the way I would work this is that this would be sent into the project nested inside, and then this LFO would also be sent into the project that's nested inside. I'm not going to bother doing a modulator. I'm just going to run this right in since we're still in one project, but later on we'll have to move these things around. But so anyway, this will be the slice scan. So then what you can do is go into the next project, and you can have multiple different ways of receiving this info. So you can receive it to where you actually hardwire every single slice, and then you can also receive it to where you only have a few slices and you just shift which point of it is being read so that you only can have the necessary slices being read in one moment. So this might sound a little confusing, so I'm just going to show you a quick example of how this kind of thing can work at first. So like, let's say first of all we want to get each slice's info in the next grid patch that's nested. So what we could do is do this. We can take, since we have 32 slices, we'll get 4 merge modules. And then these merge modules are going to be controlled by this same setup. So if we're in another project, what we would be doing is having this modulator come from the LFO and run it into a series of these again. I don't really need to do that right now because we're in one project. So for now, I'm just going to set it up. I'm just going to connect it to the ones we already have, just to not overclutter the look of all this. But later on, when we move it to another patch, we're going to split these out. So then we're going to run a 1 into these. And then what we're going to do is let's get some sample and holds. And this is a temporary solution because later on, if we want to add segments, we're going to want more information than just its point in than like one state. We're going to want multiple states because we want the slice information for each segment. So that's where array modules come in, because array modules can capture all of that. They can get the slice point for each different segment. But for now, just because I don't want to go get ahead of ourselves, let's just use sample and holds. So these sample and holds would receive from the slice scan. So I'm just gonna copy this, or before I copy this, let me connect each of these to a value readout. And now let's copy these. And now we're going to want to connect the gate input for these sample and holds to these. So now, if you look at these, you can see that these are now the same numbers that I input over here. See 0, 2.5, 5, 7.5, 9, 13.5. Now what do we have over here? 0, 0.225, 0.5, 0.75, 9, 0.135. So these are working. Notice at the end, each one is kind of glitchy. So the reason for that is that when it gets above, it just stays at 1 and keeps scanning. So what you want to do is you want to have a logic setup that turns off the 1 when it goes above this point. So in order to do that, what we will do, we'll say that, okay, let's say that if this one over here is, we got to do either greater than or equal than or greater than, I don't remember, so let's just see how it works. So if this is greater than 1, we want to turn this off. So what we can do is then just get a selector over here and have that turn that off. So now this stays in a position. So this is 5.30. Let's make sure, is that accurate? Yeah, it is 5.30. So yeah, so we're going to want to do that for each of the last ones of each merge module. So I'm just going to copy this, but connect it now to the next one down, which is this bias. Put that over here. Move this over. Get a select. Put it over here. Run that there. I haven't entered any slice information into these ones yet, so that's why these are all just zeros. Now let's copy this again. Run this one to here. Okay, and then for the last one, all right, so these will now be capturing all this information. And so you can use these now, since these are basically in their solid state, they're not constantly scanning. You can use these ones to feed the most important slices, which would be the one that's playing and the one right after it that determines its length. But I might as well just show you one other setup for this, because later on, as you start expanding things, and even in this video probably we'll end up using this, because as you start having more slices after them, there's a few different ways that you can get the rest of the slices. So like let me show you, for example. So what we would do to determine what's the current playing slice out of all this is that we can get now. So first I'll show you this, and then I'll show you this alternative scanning method. So to start with, let's say that we want to have access to 5 slices. The one that's active, the one after it, the two after it, the two before it will be kind of what we need in order to, and I know this maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but in order to start setting the manual slice points, we're going to want that, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a rule that says that the loop length is determined by the position of the slice in front of it. But I'm also going to make a rule that the slice after that one cannot back up over that slice, because I want to keep them linked together. So I'm basically going to need access to 5 slices at a time. Then later on, if we start adding unlink, we're going to need access to a bunch more slices. But yeah, for now, what we're going to do is just not do an unlinked setup. We're just going to do a basic setup where we have access to 5 slices. You can have access to even less slices, but if you set up the main slicer to have the behavior that I like, you need access to 5. So what I'm going to do now, so there's going to be like the main phase that drives this, which right now is set to the key. And then, you can also set that to a knob. Usually I have a knob. I have a button that switches it between key and knob, so I can scroll through slices or key them in. But anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to take our start time. So the start time, if this is the first grid project, the start time would be sending into the second grid project, and we would be receiving it. So again, I'm not going to rewire all this stuff. I'm just going to run this off the main start time over here. So what we can do is do the same thing we did with the LFO. I'm going to multiply this by 4. And run this into these biases. Connect these up. I know this might kind of seem convoluted that we're capturing this information here and then sending, because it seems like another unnecessary step. But again, kind of the point of that is to not have to be sending 64 different modulators out of here into the next project. And also, this general structure of like scanning and only having access to a few at a time. When I first did this kind of setup, I didn't do it that way. I actually had access to all the slices at once, and they were all running into merge modules. And it would basically just say, so I had, merge modules for the length, merge modules for the start, but it ends up making the CPU usage high. So, the minimum amount of information that needs to be kind of active at once is ideal. So that's why I'm kind of doing it in these ways that might seem a little bit roundabout, like this whole scanning of information and all that. It's not very like straightforward why you would want to do it that way, because you would think that you would just simply run run the slices into a merge that's controlled by the keyboard or by whatever's controlling the main phase. Excuse me. All right, so these are going to run into a merge. Which is going to be run off of the start time. later on, we're going to have something different doing start time. But when I'm saying start time, I'm actually just talking about basically coming out of the main keyboard tracking over here that we set up in the last project or last video. So let's set these up to here. And another reason too, like why I'm doing all the scanning, I know this is sort of a big setup here, is that I don't mind if there's like a ton of math and a ton of things going on in the second grid patch that's nested, because since that one never gets opened, it's not affecting the CPU as much as the main one. I want to really keep the minimum amount of stuff necessary on the main one where you enter in the slices, because that is one that the person using it will actually open. Even if it's just to enter the slices, you still open it. So I want to keep the minimum amount of stuff necessary on there. So that's why I prefer not to have all these modulators there. Instead, just run this one scan into the next project. All right. So are these? So you can see these are now being controlled by the keyboard. So I'm going to wire these in. Oops. This part's a little tedious, but I'm almost done. Okay, so now we can see this should be outputting whatever. See, when I hit these, I'm hitting keys, and these are corresponding with the slices. So you can see that this is giving us whatever is the selected slice working. So this right here will be our main slice. This is going to be what sends to the active slice. Okay? Now, there's a few things we can do to get the slice after it, the slice before it. So we can do this different type of scan that I had mentioned. And we can also, if we don't even want to have another scan, if we want to just simply have things hardwired in, we can hardwire things by just shifting these slightly. So for example, let's say we let me put this down here. Did I miss something? No. If we just copy this and then move it one down and then just wire these to the ones that are directly there, then we could say that this one can be the slice after it. And so the loop length would be determined by this minus this. So maybe just to start with, I'm going to do that because that's going to be a little bit, because, for a basic slicing setup, this is probably the most straightforward way with scanning. I mean, the most straightforward way would not be to not use scanning at all and just be to hardwire everything. But this is kind of, with this scanning setup, this will be the most straightforward way, because at least the two most important slices, the one that's playing and the one that's after it that determines loop length, will be hardwired. So yeah, the rest of the slices that it kind of needs access to their timing doesn't need to be as perfect. So those ones can be controlled, can be set up with this alternate scanning method that I'm going to show after. But for now, just so you can kind of see what we're doing, I don't set up too many things before even getting to slicing. Let's just wire this up. So what we're doing is we just want to wire these ones up to the one that's directly on the same row. Usually I make these things all different colors, so it's kind of easier to see. Like I'll make all these sampling holes a different color. I kind of forgot to do that on this step, or I mean this video, but it's all right. This one can probably just be connected to one. This one doesn't really matter for now. So here, just to get things started, now let's see, what do these things do? Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically say that we have, for example, access to eight different slices. Like I said, we only need 5, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to number these. I'm going to say the one that's playing would be the one that's coming out of here. So I'm going to call the one that's active slice 5. So slice 5 will always be the active slice. I'm going to just put these in selects just so we can kind of visually see what we're doing. I'm just going to call this 5. I'm going to call this one 6. And again, like setting up some of this stuff, this is because later on I want to add unlink. So that's kind of some of these roundabout things are because I want to add some of these other features later, which is another reason for the whole scanning thing, is that it kind of helps with later on when you want to have a lot more, when you want to end up expanding on this whole project. All right, we don't actually need this. Maybe I'll color code these. Let me, all right, this one red. All right, so what I'm going to do is wire this row into 5. Oh, that's there. Into 5. And the next one into 6. I'm going to put labels so that we know, so that this doesn't get too confusing. So this, that gets sent to the start time over here. I'm going to switch this out now. I'm going to just want to make sure that we're switching out after all that stuff from before. Yeah, we're switching out after everything. Okay. I'm going to make a button over here that says manual. And then we're going to have the start time be determined by this. And then I'm going to take the loop length. And I'm going to do the same thing. And this is going to be determined by 6 minus 5. Or slice 6 minus slice 5. These selects aren't doing anything. I just have them as something to run it so we can kind of see what we're doing. So slice 6 minus slice 5. Manual. All right, so now let's just see if this is going to work to start with. And I'm going to make a whole bunch of changes to this in a minute to kind of fix the behavior of setting up slicing. Oh, this is off. Turn this down a little bit. Hopefully that's not too loud or too quiet. All right. So let's see if this is working. Yeah, so these are working now for the first beginning parts of this. Wonder what's a good way to put this on the screen. Maybe that's a little trying to figure out the best way to orient this so you can kind of see everything I'm doing. I always work with 2 monitors, so I want to try to get everything on the screen so you can kind of see it well. All right, so now we can set these slices up. We say that's slice 1. Why is it? Oh, this is why. We need to run this into the hold time. So where was the loop length divided by this was going into these. So we need to move that we need to move where this is in the chain because this needs to go into the loop length. You know what, this might look really confusing for everybody. This is what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to just delete this. I'm going to bring this back over here. And we're going to want to put that select before it hits the setup where it gets mixed with the hold time over here. So we want to put it, make sure this loop length divided by that. Yeah, we want to put it over here. So now we can connect this to the manual knob or manual button, and then we'll run this subtract into the lower part of that select. Okay, so now that's working. So let's go back to this. So usually when I start something like this, I'll have all of the slices all the way up. So like what I'll do is I'll just kind of bring it back until it's at the right point. So you can see now this is the beginning part of manual slicing. We've got a rough kind of manual slicer starting to work. So one thing that I like to do, I like to kind of restrict the boundaries of what can be sliced. So like, let's say we're at this slice over here. I don't want this to be able to go any further back than the slice before it while they're in link mode. Because if it does that, then it's going to totally throw off the whole linking, because I want each slice to sort of sit in its own space. And you can see right now it can. And then it does this kind of weird behavior. So that's not what we want. So in order to fix that, what I'm going to do is just create a setup of rules. But these rules now are going to require us to have more slices accessed. So now we could continue this kind of setup and just get all 5 slices. So, you know, basically slice 4 would be up 1, slice 3 would be up 1, slice 7 would be down here. So we could do that and feed these into here, and that would work just fine. I'm going to show you one other method we can also do, which is a different scanning method. And so this scanning method will work just as fine. It captures the information, but the only thing about it is that it's constantly scanning, as opposed to these ones which have captured in the information with these sample and holds. The other method is constantly scanning, and it doesn't really matter, because you know when you hit a note, it's only the only ones that really matter, so that nothing skips, everything plays right, is the one that's playing and the one after it. until we start getting into unlinking, then more of them are going to matter. But at least for now, with what we're dealing with, these are the only two that have to hit perfectly on time whenever they hit. These other, so the information that I'm going to be getting from the other slices is just simply for right now, to allow us to restrict the boundaries so that so slicing makes more sense, and that we kind of know where we're working with, and we don't and accidentally put our slice points way off where they don't belong. So what I'm going to do right now is show now another method for scanning. Hopefully I can remember exactly how I was doing this. So what I'm going to do, let's say right now we want to receive, on mine I'd add 16. Let's just do 8. I had 16 because in my main project, it allows for up to 6 unlinks in a row with the way I have it set up. But since, like I said, we're not dealing with unlinking right now, I'm just gonna do a scan that's gonna be constantly receiving information from these. So this one is receiving from there. We want to get the one that's receiving from the LFO. Is this one. So this is gonna receive from the same thing that was running into these sample and holds, which is this thing slice scan. And again, this is all meant to be in a secondary project where it's receiving it through modulators. But again, I don't want to work in 2 different grid patches because it's going to get way too confusing for everybody. So I just want to do it in one. So on this one, what we're going to want to do, wait, do I want to send that in there? Ones. No, I want to send this also into sample and holds. These setups, I made these a long time ago, and I've done so many different versions that like sometimes I might kind of fumble over what I'm doing because I just don't totally remember how I had them set up. I just, before filming this video, did a practice to try to refresh my memory where I set up a couple different kind of scanning methods to try to decide which one I was going to do on this video. So it might take me a second of troubleshooting to kind of recall how all this stuff works. But the idea with this one is that it's only going to be receiving 8 at a time, but they're going to get shifted. So it's always going to be playing the current slices. So slice 5 will always be right here. Slice 4 will always be right here. So that way we don't need to have as many of these big kind of merge setups. And so it just allows for like a smaller amount of modules, because these ones don't have, like I was saying, in this type of setup, slice 4 and 7 and 3 don't need to have their timing be perfect. So let's say this is going to receive from slice scan. And also, like I mentioned before, eventually if we add segments, we would switch these sample and holds out for arrays that will capture every state. Okay, so now if we look at this right now, this should be giving us the same thing as the first bunch of slices. 0, 3.6, 5, 6.5. 0.62. Why is that? Oh, it's because the fine tune. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. All right, so what we want to do first, because I want to have previous slice information, I want to shift this whole thing so that the current playing slice is going to be this one, number 5. I just stopped the video for a minute to take a break. So I'm going to resume where we left off. So I was just about to get into an alternate method for doing scanning. This alternate method is this merge with a split module with 8, and it's going into these sample and holds, and they're receiving from this. So I'm going to change this a little bit. So let's do this. Let's have them receive from the main LFO. And again, this would all be in the nested patch, so they would be receiving from the modulator that's sent from the main LFO. And so what I want to do right now is I want this LFO to be shifted by the well, first here, let me put a multiply by 4 just so that it works, just that it looks the same and these numbers are more stable. All right, so I want this to be shifted by the key tracking. And the point of that is that what I want from this is that I want this to be centered around whatever's the current playing slice. So let's call this one slice 5. All right, and so what I want the keyboard or the phase knob, however you decide to set it up, I want that to control. I want that to shift it. So I'm gonna get a modulator from here. Let's call this shift. Let's go into phase and let's get a shift. So I think that I want this to shift backwards by negative 100%. So let's see, is that working? So yeah, it's working now. So if you look at this first slice, you see every time I hit a key up, why is that one getting to 1? Let's see. Oh, because let me just set these at more sort of normal settings. All right. So yeah, every time I hit a new note, I want it to shift this entire thing, which it's doing. These are all set to 0, but that's probably because I never set these slices. Yeah, these slices up here are still 0. So the other thing that I want to happen is that I want it to shift this entire thing so that the center is here. Because remember, I'm trying to get the slice information before and after. So what I'm going to do, since we're at 1/32, we want it to be shifted by 1/32 times 4, so shifted by 1/8. So let's just get a 1 divided by 8. And shift this, I believe, forward. Let's see if this works. So this is slice 5, and you can see this is working now. Okay? So now what we can do, we can run these into these slices here. And so you can see that having this set up, it's a little simpler than having to copy all these merge modules, multiple times. So it just allows us to have less stuff on the patch. So that's the only reason I'm doing it, is just for the sake of kind of simplifying the whole signal flow. I'm just going to label these so we can see kind of what we're doing. And again, yeah, for this setup right now, we just need 5. But this general thing, I'm going to later on, when we add unlink, I'm going to expand upon. I'm going to have 16, so that basically we'll be able to see. And the reason for that is, let's say you unlink several slices, you want it to be able to read a handful of slices down past all the unlinks. What's the current slice, so that everything works correctly. So that's why we'll end up kind of expanding this thing later if we add unlink into this project. Oh, 6 we already have. So we have 5 and 6. We're just using this right now to get these ones. All right. And so now the purpose of this was that I just want to restrict the slicing over here so that, like I was mentioning earlier, I want to restrict it so that a slice cannot go further back than the slice before it. Okay, so to do that is pretty simple. We just have to set up a rule for each one of these. So what I'm going to do is let's put this in here in a select, and let's say now that if slice 4 is smaller than slice 3, then switch it to slice 3. So what that'll do is if you try to get slice 4 further back, it'll just stay at whatever point slice 3 was at. Okay? So now for slice 5, the active slice, we'll do the same thing. Let's put this over here, and we'll say that if slice 5 is less than slice 4, but I'm going to run in, let me do just so you can see everything easier. Let me make a little bit of space between all these. So we're going to say that if slice 5 is less than slice 4, but that's coming out of here because slice 4 might be set to this point, then switch it to that. And now let's do the same thing for slice 6. And slice 7. Okay, so now this should give us that type of behavior. And since, we're 5 is enough now to that to give us those restrictions. That's why I was trying to get 5 for this first phase of manual slicing. So now let's go back in and see how does the behavior work when we're slicing. So let's go to this slice over here. Now let's see how far back can we take it. Oh, we actually can take it all the way. So why is that? I must have messed something up. I messed something up. So let's see. Why is that? Oh, something's not connected here. Oh, whoops. That's why. I thought I connected these. I don't know why that's not. All right. Let's see now. How far can we take this back? Okay, perfect. So now this can only go as far back as the slice before it. So now if we go to slice before it, you see the slice after it, we can move as far back as that. So this kind of keeps us within boundaries when we're working in linked slices mode. So now you can see it will just make more sense. So like this slice now, I can't move it back to there because that would effectively make this slice completely disappear. It would go into the negative. So that's why I'm doing that, is just to keep things a little more controlled. So you can see now we have this basic manual slicing setup. And we can, here, I'll make an adjustment. And even though that hold time was kind of rough, it seems to more or less be working. These don't seem to be giving me clicks, but again, that was kind of a temporary setup. So there's a chance we might end up reworking it later. But you can see and then another thing I'm going to add later is one-shot mode. So right now we're working, I'm in sustain, so it only plays as long as I hold down the note, but you can see there's no clicks. So that's good. Oops, I'm on the wrong one. So usually when I do this, I don't hit the keys. If you've seen, I usually have a gate that just sends a repeating trigger in, or else just sends a solid gate so that it just does it in loop mode, so that way I don't have to keep pressing it. It makes adding the slices a lot quicker. But I haven't added that step in yet, so just for now, just to demonstrate slicing working there. So, and we can just to make sure all of our timing is working well. Here I had a clip I made earlier of just these notes in order. I'm not sure if it's going to play right because all right, over there the slices get messed up, but you can see over here at least if I repeat this, the slices that we have actually sliced are playing correctly. Except we did get a little error there. So why is that? Was there? It might be because this clip that I copied, but we also might be getting errors in this thing. Let me make sure that this is working correctly. So that might be something to troubleshoot. I might troubleshoot that then on the next video if this is a problem. Okay, yeah, there is some sort of issue happening over here. So we can look into what's going on. So sometimes things like that start happening with the scanning mode. So that might be an issue that we're getting because we're doing scanning. So we might want to end up changing this setup, or at least for the most important slices, we might want to actually hardwire in all 5 of them instead of using this setup. I believe in my main patch, I'm only using these ones for the ones outside of the initial 5. The main 5 I do have hardwired just to keep the timing tight. And then I have these ones just to scan the ones way on the outer bounds so that it knows what's going on with all the unlocks. So yeah, we can fix that on the next video, and then as I'm working on this, you'll see we're going to stumble into errors and problems here and there, and I'm hoping this will kind of help with the general learning of like how to troubleshoot these things and how to figure out how to get down to the bottom of some of these problems and stuff. So again, so it's not just like me telling you this is how a slicer works, but more about being able to figure out ways to make your own kind of slicers. And if you've been following since this first video, this might seem like a kind of a crazy thing to do all this work just to get basic sample slicing, when we do have slicing to a degree in Bitwig sampler. You can right click on audio clip and do slice to multi-sample. But for one, I like this project for me just started out being able to have a basic slice mode, but then once you get a good working manual slicer, there's so many things you can do to build off it, especially if you're into like producing glitch, because there ends up being a lot of cool things you can do once you've got this kind of setup working. So that's kind of like the creative side of this. And so, I think everybody who makes these will probably figure out cool creative things you can add on to it, but at least just getting the general sort of structure working, especially with the things like the hold time to the loop length, getting all that working off the bat really just kind of allows you to get to the fun stuff. All right, so yeah, I guess I'll continue with the next video pretty soon, where probably first I'm going to troubleshoot what was causing that little error right there, and then yeah, just for improve this design, and then start adding in the other features. Okay, cool. Thanks for watching.